Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. President Donald Trump announces investments of up to $500 billion for infrastructure linked to artificial intelligence through a new partnership of OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. President also talking about the dozens of executive orders he signed Monday right after his inauguration, including one pardoning 1,500 rioters convicted in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. President Trump meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and a group of other House and Senate Republicans discussing their agenda on border security, energy promotion, taxes, and spending, and more. Action on more of President Trump's cabinet nominations. The Finance Committee in the Senate approving Treasury Secretary nominee Scott Bessent, and there are hearings for UN Ambassador nominee Elise Stefanik and Veterans Affairs Secretary nominee Doug Collins. And new Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was confirmed unanimously by the Senate Monday night, talks about U.S. foreign policy with America First, saying it must answer three questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? And an Episcopal bishop pleads with President Trump at today's National Prayer Service at Washington National Cathedral to have mercy on transgender children and undocumented immigrants. Associated Press writes that President Donald Trump on Tuesday announcing investments worth up to $500 billion for infrastructure tied to artificial intelligence by a new partnership formed by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. The new entity, Stargate, will start building out projects needed for the further development of the fast-evolving AI in Texas. According to the White House, the initial investment expected to be $100 billion and could reach 5 times that sum. Joining President Trump for the announcement, fresh off his inauguration, Masayoshi Son of SoftBank, Sam Altman of OpenAI, and Larry Ellison of Oracle. That was from AP. Here's President Trump at the White House with those three individuals.
It's my honor to welcome 3 of the world's leading technology CEOs. And in the case of Larry Ellison, it's well beyond technology. He's sort of CEO of everything. He's an amazing man, an amazing business person. But to announce the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history, and it's all taking place right here in America. As you know, there's great competition for AI and other things, and they're coming in at the highest level. We're joined by Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, SoftBank CEO, my friend Masayoshi Son, and CEO of OpenAI, and I would say by far the leading expert based on everything I read, Sam Altman. So that's great that you're coming in together. That's a massive group of talent and money. Together, these world-leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States, and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately. This monumental undertaking is a resounding declaration of confidence in America's potential under a new president. Let me be a new president. I didn't say it, they did. So I appreciate that, fellas. But it'll ensure the future of technology. What we want to do is we want to keep it in this country. China is a competitor and others are competitors. We want it to be in this country, and we're making it available. I'm going to help a lot through emergency declarations, because we have an emergency. We have to get this stuff built. So they have to produce a lot of electricity, and we'll make it possible for them to get that production done very easily at their own plants if they want, where they'll build, at the plant, the AI plant, they'll build energy generation, and that will be incredible. But it's technology and artificial intelligence, all made in the USA. Beginning immediately, Stargate will be building the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI, and this will include the construction of colossal data centers, very, very massive structures. I was in the real estate business. These buildings, these are big, beautiful buildings. They're going to employ a lot of people. And physical campuses in locations currently being scouted nationwide. They're making their choices of locations. I think they have their choice.
President Donald Trump in the White House Roosevelt Room, joined by the 3 people he mentioned, Masayoshi Son of SoftBank, Sam Altman of OpenAI, Larry Ellison of Oracle. President Trump also talking about what he did on his first day in office, and that was Monday, Inauguration Day, where he signed dozens of executive orders.
Our country will be prospering like never before. I think that's true, and it's going to be the golden age of America. As I say, yesterday we had the most ambitious, action-oriented day of any administration in history. No, there's never been a first day like yesterday, as you know. I signed a sweeping slate of executive orders to stop the invasion of our borders. I launched a government-wide effort to defeat inflation and bring down the cost of daily life and bring down the cost of energy, magnificently bring it down. And when energy comes down, Larry, I'd say generally speaking, when energy comes down, everything else comes down. The prices of food and the prices of everything else come down. Energy is that's the big baby. And we declared a national energy emergency to drill, baby, drill, our term that we use. We're going to drill, baby, drill like never before. We ended destructive DEI mandates across the federal government and returned our country to a merit-based system and a common sense system. As you know, the Supreme Court gave us a decision on merit, where things in this country can be based on merit now instead of a lot of different rules, regulations, and things that really put our country at a big disadvantage. We permanently stopped government censorship and restored free speech. That was signed yesterday. We renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Sounds so beautiful, the Gulf of America, and returned the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley. They took off the name.
President Donald Trump at the White House. Associated Press writes the new president posted on his Truth social media network early Tuesday that he would fire more than 1,000 presidential appointees, quote, who are not aligned with our vision, including some high-profile names. The article goes on. Trump fired chef and humanitarian Jose Andres from the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, retired General Mark Milley from the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, former State Department official Brian Hook from the board of the Wilson Center, and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms from the President's Export Council. "You're fired," Trump posted, his catchphrase from his reality TV show The Apprentice. AP article notes that former President Joe Biden also removed many Trump appointees in his first days in office, including former Press Secretary Sean Spicer from the board overseeing the U.S. Naval Academy. Among the executive orders that President Trump signed on Monday and spoke about today, he did not bring up initially pardoning 1,500 rioters from the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. But during a Q&A portion with reporters today, they brought it up.
You would agree that it's never acceptable to assault a police officer.
Sure.
Right? So then if I can, among those you pardoned, DJ Rodriguez, he drove a stun gun into the neck of a D.C. police officer who was abducted by the mob that day. He later confessed on video to the FBI and pleaded guilty for his crimes. Why does he deserve a pardon?
Well, I don't know. Was it a pardon? Because we're looking at commutes and we're looking at pardons. Okay, well, we'll take a look at everything. But I can say this. Murderers today are not even charged. You have murderers that aren't charged all over. You take a look at what's gone on in Philadelphia, take a look at what's gone off in L.A., where people murder people and they don't get charged. These people have already served years in prison, and they've served them viciously. It's a disgusting prison. It's been horrible. It's inhumane. It's been a terrible, terrible thing. I also say this. You go to Portland, where they wrapped police officers, shot police officers, nothing happened to anybody. You go to Seattle, where they took over a big chunk of the city and people died. Portland, a lot of people died. Wait a minute. And you go also, take a look at Minneapolis, because I was there and I watched it. And if I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city wouldn't even exist today. People were killed and nobody went to jail. So these people have already served a long period of time, and I made a decision to give a pardon. Joe Biden gave a pardon yesterday to a lot of criminals. These are criminals that he gave a pardon to, and you should be asking that question. Why did he give a pardon to all of these people that committed crimes? Why did he give a pardon to the J6 Unselect Committee when they burned and destroyed all documents which showed that they did what was wrong, not me? Wait a minute. Why did they give a pardon to all of his relatives, his brother who made millions of dollars, to all these different people. He gave pardons. That's the question you should be answering.
President Donald Trump, a news conference at the White House. Former Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky told Semaphore News, "Well, I think I agree with the vice president," referring to J.D. Vance's recent remarks that violent Capitol riot offenders shouldn't be pardoned. Again, the quote from Senator McConnell, "No one should excuse violence, and particularly violence against police officers." Reporters caught up with Senator Thom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, in the hallway of a Senate office building.
Think of any pardoned violent rioters?
If there are, we're trying to go through it right now, but obviously
It's everybody.
anyone, what I'm trying to do is figure out there are some commutations. To me, I just can't agree. I'm about to file 2 bills that will increase the penalties up to and including the death penalty for the murder of a police officer, and increasing the penalties and creating federal crimes for assaulting a police officer. That should give you everything you need to know about my position. Look, it was surprising to me that it was a blanket pardon. Now I'm going through the details.
What do you think? I mean, is there anything lawmakers can do, or is at this point?
No, although, with what I should have mentioned before is you should pay attention. This probably won't get reported, but I hope it does. And that's the abuse of the pardon process by Joe Biden. I hope anybody who's going to be critical of what occurred last night is also very critical of a massive overreach by President Biden. Prospective pardons, kind of like a get-out-of-jail-free card, makes no sense to me either. So, to answer your question, maybe we need to go back and look at the contours of the authority that future presidents have around pardons.
Does this put Republicans in a difficult position?
I think it puts Democrats in a difficult position if they look at President Biden's pardons and they don't say what I've just said about President Trump's.
Senator Thom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, speaking to reporters today on Capitol Hill. ABC News writes that Enrique Tarrio, the former head of the Proud Boys, and Stuart Rhodes, the head of the Oath Keepers, were released Tuesday from prison following President Donald Trump's sweeping pardon of those convicted in connection with the January 6th Capitol riot. They were serving 22 and 18-year sentences, respectively, for their roles in the riot. Other convicted members were scheduled to be released throughout the day from Washington, D.C. area jails and prisons. ABC News articles also says of the nearly 1,600 individuals who have faced charges associated with the Capitol attack, according to figures released by the U.S. Attorney's Office, 608 individuals face charges for assaulting, resisting, or interfering with law enforcement trying to protect the complex that day. Approximately 140 law enforcement officers were injured during the riot, the Department of Justice has said, reporting from ABC News. The Senate Democratic leader, the minority leader, Chuck Schumer of New York, spoke on the Senate floor today not only about the executive order dealing with the pardons, but also all the other executive orders that President Trump signed on the first day.
On day one, President Trump and his executive orders made it harder for Americans to save on prescription drug costs. President Trump cleared the way for big oil and polluters and halted leasing of offshore wind farms. He took steps to make it harder to enroll in the ACA and made Medicaid less generous. He removed the United States from the Paris Climate Accords. Nothing President did on day one lowered grocery prices. Nothing helped Americans achieve their dream of owning a home. Nothing will help working families earn more and save more. Their drug costs will go up. The cost of buying and maintaining a home will go up. The cost of health care will go up. The cost of energy will go up. So who is exactly Donald Trump's golden age for? Not for working Americans, that is for sure. President Trump's golden age is one for America's biggest drug companies, who can now worry less about lowering their prices. It's a golden age for America's richest oil executives, who want nothing more than to kill clean jobs and deepen America's dependence on fossil fuels. It's a golden age for America's top 1%, who want another $1 trillion tax break paid for on the backs of workers in the middle class. And sadly, it's a golden age for lawlessness and lawbreakers who were pardoned yesterday by President Trump. There's no other way to describe President Trump's pardon of January 6th offenders than un-American. Let's be clear. President Trump didn't just pardon protesters. He pardoned some people convicted of assaulting police officers in seditious conspiracy. It's a betrayal of the highest order of our Capitol police officers who risk their lives to keep us safe. When President Trump talks about a golden age, he's talking about a golden age for drug companies, powerful oil executives, and rioters who attack our police and attack our democracy. That is not the golden age Americans want.
Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, the minority leader on the Senate floor. This is Washington Today from AP. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Republican of New York, opened her confirmation hearing Tuesday for U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations by pledging to implement President Donald Trump's America First mandate and roll out a review of U.S. funding for some of the world body's agencies. Noting that the U.S. is the largest single contributor to the United Nations, she pointed to the children's agency UNICEF and the World Food Program as examples of UN entities that are effective, but said the U.S. has to ensure its investments are making America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. She stressed the need to reform the world body, where lawmakers raised the ability of American adversaries Russia and China to veto resolutions in the UN Security Council, and went so far as to say that it has not lived up to its founding mission. That was from AP. Elise Stefanik had her confirmation hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Here is Senator Dave McCormick, Republican of Pennsylvania, asking her about the UN and Israel.
I'm deeply troubled by the virulent anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias at the United Nations. And since Hamas's brutal massacre on October 7th, the Jewish community in Pennsylvania and across our country has seen an explosion in hate. As you know, this is not theoretical for me and for Dina. We live in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, where we had the Tree of Life tragedy, and a painful reminder of where that hate can lead. In Congress, you've done an incredible job of pushing back against anti-Semitism in our nation's institutions. You exposed the presidents of the three leading universities for their lack of moral clarity. And I was one of the first to call for the firing of the president of UPenn because of the tough questioning that you forced her and other presidents to leave office. I'm confident you can bring that same fire and effectiveness and leadership to the UN. And let me start by asking how you'll fight back against anti-Semitism and bias against Israel within the UN. Hamas terrorists have been operating with impunity from UNRWA facilities, and UNRWA employees even participated in the massacre on October 7th. So beyond funding, how will you work with our allies to end UNRWA's mandate and shift legitimate humanitarian functions to other UN organs or trusted NGOs?
Thank you so much, Senator McCormick, and thank you for your leadership combating anti-Semitism. I know it's important to the American people and it's important to Pennsylvanians, and something that I am deeply committed to doing in this role. It's one of the reasons why in my conversation with President Trump, I was interested in this position, because if you look at the anti-Semitic rot within the United Nations, there are more resolutions targeting Israel than any other country, any other crisis combined. And we have significant national Security Councils, the anti-Semitism, whether it's UN Women failing to condemn Hamas's terrorist attack and terrorist regime against innocent civilian women, using rape and targeting women, specifically taking them hostage. I am overjoyed that those 3 young women hostages were returned home. We need to stay committed to ensuring every hostage is brought home. I've met with many hostage families. This position, we need to be a voice of moral clarity on the UN Security Council and at the United Nations at large, for the world to hear the importance of standing with Israel. And I intend to do that. This year will mark the 50th year since the disgraceful Zionism is Racism resolution at the United Nations. And at the time, our U.S. Ambassador, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, spoke out strongly against that disgraceful resolution. That is the type of leadership that I hope to bring, if confirmed, to the United Nations. And President Trump has a tremendous record when it comes to standing with Israel, whether it's the Abraham Accords, whether it's his commitment to combating anti-Semitism, or recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel. This is a strong, strong record, and I hope to do that at the UN if confirmed.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Republican from New York, the nominee for U.S. Ambassador to the UN, questioned by Senator Dave McCormick, Republican of Pennsylvania, at today's Senate Foreign Relations Committee confirmation hearing. Senator Christopher Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, also asked the nominee about anti-Semitism, but in the context of a story from the presidential inauguration day. New York Post writes, Elon Musk has defended the one-arm gesture he gave during President Trump's inauguration, arguing the left-wingers who accused him of giving a Nazi salute need better dirty tricks. The billionaire tech titan caused a stir on social media after he placed his right hand over his heart and then extended his arm into the air as he thanked Trump supporters on Monday. Frankly, they need better dirty tricks. The everyone is Hitler attack is so tired, Musk said in a post on X as he addressed the backlash. That was the article from the New York Post. Here's Senator Murphy and the nominee for U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Elise Stefanik.
What do you think of Elon Musk, perhaps the president's most visible advisor, doing 2 Heil Hitler salutes last night at the president's televised rally?
No, Elon Musk did not do those salutes. I was not at the rally, but I can tell you I've been at many rallies with Elon Musk, who loves to cheer when President Trump says we need to send, our U.S. space program to Mars. Elon Musk is a visionary. I'm looking forward to his work in DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and look forward to looking how we can be more efficient and effective. But that is simply not the case. And to say so is the American people are smart. They see through it. They support Elon Musk. We are proud to be the country of such successful entrepreneurs. That is one of our greatest strengths as Americans.
Let me share with you what a few Americans have said about it. Evan Kilgore, a right-wing political commentator, wrote on X, "Holy crap, did Elon Musk just Heil Hitler at the Trump inauguration rally? This is incredible. We are so back." Andrew Torba, who's the founder of the right-wing Christian nationalist social platform Gab, said incredible things are happening. As he amplified the visual. The Proud Boys chapter in Ohio posted the clip on a Telegram channel with the text Heil Trump. A chapter of the white nationalist group White Lives Matter posted it on Telegram. Thanks for hearing us, Elon. The white flame will rise again. I could keep going. Over and over last night, white supremacist groups and neo-Nazi groups in this country rallied around that visual. Does it concern you that those elements of the neo-Nazi and white supremacist element in the United States believe that what they saw last night was a neo-Nazi salute?
What concerns me is these are the questions you believe are most important to ask to the UN ambassador. I have a very strong record when it comes to combating anti-Semitism. We just had a historic election where President Trump earned historic support from American voters because of his strong leadership combating anti-Semitism, which has been a scourge across the country, skyrocketing since October 7th. So I intend to bring moral clarity to this position and continue to speak out as a voice, as a beacon of light, condemning anti-Semitism at the United Nations, which is representative of President Trump's record and President Trump's promises that he made on the campaign trail.
You are right. These are the questions I choose to ask because I think that your work and the administration's work on anti-Semitism only comes with real impact and credibility if it holds both right and left accountable. I simply don't believe that if a member of the squad made that same gesture last night, that there wouldn't be commentary from you and others. So I want to make sure that our work has credibility, and credibility comes with calling anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism behavior out when it comes from both the right and the left.
Senator Christopher Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, questioning Elise Stefanik, currently a congresswoman, Republican of New York, nominated for U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations in the Trump administration. This was the Senate Foreign Relations Committee confirmation hearing. The Anti-Defamation League posted on X, "This is a delicate moment. It's a new day, and yet so many are on edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media only adds to the anxiety. It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. But again, we appreciate that people are on edge. In this moment, all sides should give one another a bit of grace, perhaps even the benefit of the doubt, and take a breath. This is a new beginning. Let's hope for healing and work toward unity in the months and years ahead. That statement from the Anti-Defamation League. This is Washington Today. Former Representative Doug Collins, President Trump's nominee to lead the Veterans Affairs Department, writes the New York Times, told lawmakers in a confirmation hearing on Tuesday that he would defend a program introduced in Mr. Trump's first term that allows veterans to seek health services outside the department's system. Mr. Collins, a Navy veteran, Air Force Reserve chaplain, and fast-talking former pastor, appeared before the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee as the first potential cabinet official to face confirmation hearings after Mr. Trump took office. His hearing was delayed by a week because of an incomplete background check. That was from the New York Times. During the hearing, Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, asked Doug Collins about veterans' benefits.
Last week at a hearing of the Homeland Security Committee, I gave Russell Vought, the nominee for OMB director, the opportunity to renounce a proposal that he made, and it's included in Project 2025, to impose a means test for VA disability compensation benefits. I also asked him about his proposal to claw back benefits from service-disabled veterans. He has advocated that anybody with less than a 30% disability receive no benefits. He refused to renounce either proposal. I need from you a commitment that you will oppose any such efforts by the administration.
Well, Senator Blumenthal, I've made a habit up here being here. I'll never answer for someone else, and the question was asked of him. I will say this. I've not been a part of Project 25, haven't even read it. My issue is I'm going to take care of the veterans. That means that we're not going to balance budgets on the back of veterans' benefits. We're not going to do that. We're going to put the veteran first. And for me, that decision comes to the Secretary. That's in our budgetary oversight. That's what I'll be coming to you for. As we talked about in your office, if there are issues that I need, I'm going to come with you with the issue of the solving. If there's issues that I say that you want to see, but the law doesn't allow it, then I'm going to say, here's where we change the law, because that's what we've done before. So my commitment is to the veteran and making sure that we have our budget and sufficiently fund it so that our veterans receive their benefits.
I'm going to interpret that as a yes.
Ms. Senator, ranking member, you interpret it.
In his first term, President Trump attempted to go down this road by trying to eliminate individual unemployability benefits for retirement age veterans, in my view, a very ill-conceived proposal that was later retracted, and I hope that you will oppose any such proposal during this administration.
Mr. Ranking Member, I'm not familiar with that discussion. What I am familiar with is what President Trump did advocate during his 4 years, and that was the Mission Act, the Accountability Act, the things that put veterans first. In fact, his words were, I want to take care of the veterans. So as we look forward to this, I look forward to carrying out his vision of taking care of our veterans, putting them first, making sure the VA is in a situation where it is actually doing that and having the resources it needs, but also having the efficiencies it needs to make it better. So I look back to what he's already done, and I know that was putting the veteran first, and I will be doing the same.
VA Secretary nominee Doug Collins, questioned by Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut, at today's confirmation hearing. Senator Tommy Tuberville, Republican of Alabama, asked Doug Collins about underperforming VA employees.
When I first got here and got on this committee 4 years ago, one of the first things that we did, President Trump had eliminated 4,000 people. He didn't care what they were in. If they didn't do their job, they got fired. He took 4,000 of them and sent them out the door. Well, the Biden administration come in, the first thing they did is they rehired them and back pay and put them in a situation where a lot of them had really breached protocol. Now, I come from a previous profession. If you didn't do right, you were gone. Will you commit to doing what's right for the veteran when it comes to the personnel that are handling these people? We can talk about acts and laws and bills and all this. It ain't gonna make a damn bit of good unless we get the people that's running these VAs and these homes that take care of our veterans. We don't get the best. Will you commit to that?
Senator, thank you for that. I mean, your last day was not just your profession, but I think every other profession in the world expects accountability. And I think that's what raises the standard. So yes, we're going to have accountability. The VA Accountability and Whistleblower Act, which by the way, passed unanimously out of the Senate, his intent was to make sure that those workers who were not fulfilling their mission, they were not going to take a job anymore. I intend to make sure that this is a promise that I have, is that if there is someone who is harming or in the way of our veteran and taking a veteran's benefit away, I have no problem in getting rid of that person and making sure we do it properly. And I have no problem with the legal repercussions of that, because there's no one at the VA going to stand in the way of a veteran getting the care properly. And if they're not doing it safely, which we saw many of those were not doing it safely and putting our veterans in harm's way. But I will say it again, and I think you would agree with me. I will be the biggest cheerleader for every VA employee out there who is out there getting up every morning, doing it right, making sure we're taking care of our veterans. But I believe the only way I can make them better, the only way I can push them, is to not allow those not to do it. So we have to have that accountability. This body passed it unanimously. It is about raising standards. It's about saying that we're going to expect the best and we're going to require the best. Because if I want to retain doctors, if I want to retain nurses, if we want to retain benefits people, then you got to set a standard that says, I'm proud to be here. And for me, I want to lead an agency that works and puts our veterans first and holds accountable those that have not.
Awesome.
Senator Tommy Tuberville, Republican of Alabama, questioning the VA Secretary nominee, former Republican Congressman from Georgia Doug Collins, at today's Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. Again, from the New York Times article, like many of Mr. Trump's other cabinet selections, including Pete Hegseth, his nominee to oversee the Defense Department, Mr. Collins reflects the new president's priorities for agency leadership in his second term, with personal loyalty central to each selection. Mr. Collins had a lead role defending Mr. Trump during his first impeachment investigation. Mr. Collins is not expected to face a difficult confirmation fight, in part because of the bipartisan and apolitical nature of much of the department's work managing a sprawling health system and veterans' benefits. That was from the New York Times. The Senate Finance Committee voted today to send another of President Donald Trump's cabinet nominees to the full Senate, Scott Bessent, for Treasury Secretary. The vote was 16-11. Two Democrats joined all Republicans in voting yes, Mark Warner of Virginia and Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire. Senator Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, is the committee chair. He spoke before the vote.
Mr. Bessent has decades of academic, professional, and leadership experience relevant to this position, as well as the gravitas, demeanor, and character to be an effective secretary. Mr. Bessent has also thoughtfully responded to our questions during the rigorous, diligent process, and his hearing, and in the course of that hearing, has answered 200+ questions for the record, not including the subparts. These are questions that have been asked by members of this committee and have been responded to carefully by him with thousands of documents. There is no doubt that Mr. Bessent is an excellent choice for Secretary of the Treasury. He has my vote. In prior Congresses, I've joined with many of my Republican colleagues in voting for well-qualified Treasury Secretary candidates put forward by a Democrat president, even though I did not agree with all of the positions which they advocated. I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle today to join in advancing this well-qualified nominee.
Senator Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, chair of the Finance Committee at today's meeting. Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, the committee ranking member, opposed the nomination.
This nominee is not square on his taxes. Like others on Wall Street, he has opted out of paying his fair share of his Medicare taxes. The IRS has gone to court twice to ban this particular scheme that Mr. Bessent is using. Treasury policy says what Mr. Bessent is doing is against the law. Apparently he disagrees, and maybe he'll pay his Medicare taxes sometime down the road. And remember, this is an individual who's a billionaire. It's not going to be a hardship on him to pay his Medicare taxes. My view is you cannot have a Treasury Secretary who doesn't abide by Treasury policy. That is what you are going to have on day one if Mr. Bessent is confirmed. That's number one. Number two, I think Mr. Bessent came to this committee completely unprepared to answer some of the most basic questions about tax policy. He was asked a critically important one. Should wages be treated differently than wealth? This is the central debating question, colleagues, on taxes about whether the ultra-wealthy should get a better deal than people who work for a living. Mr. Bessent bobbed and weaved a little bit and basically said, that's just the way it is. You might as well have said, let them eat cake. And that's what we're dealing with here. The last point I want to make deals with an issue that came in writing last night provided by Mr. Bessent. According to news reports, longtime Trump advisor Boris Epstein ran a quid pro quo scheme during the 2024 campaign. He told certain people seeking cabinet appointments that if they paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars, he'd push Trump to nominate them. After reading these reports, I felt that the committee needed an answer to what actually happened. So in December, I sent a letter to Mr. Bessent and the Trump transition with straightforward questions about this. Last week, I asked Mr. Bessent about it in our one-on-one meeting. He told me Mr. Epstein talked to him about payments for public relations, which is a pretty sleazy way of pitching a quid pro quo. The reason I bring it up is Mr. Bessent has now given a different answer in response to a written question after the hearing. His new answer is nobody ever asked him about payments in exchange for an appointment. He still won't reveal who else in Trump's orbit he talked to about it. Colleagues, this smells.
Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, Finance Committee ranking member at today's meeting before the committee approved the Scott Bessent nomination for Treasury Secretary by vote of 16-11, 2 Democrats voting yes with Republicans. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said that he is moving forward with 3 nominees that have already been reported from committee: John Ratcliffe to be Director of the CIA, Kristi Noem to be Secretary of Homeland Security, and Pete Hegseth to be Defense Secretary. And we are learning that the Senate Judiciary Committee will be voting on Pam Bondi for Attorney General on January 29th. Wall Street today, the Dow up 537, NASDAQ up 126, S&P up 52. Washington today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea, it's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you listen to podcasts. Story from AFP: after taking the oath of office to be sworn in as the nation's 72nd Secretary of State, Marco Rubio promised that every action taken by the State Department will be determined by the answers to 3 questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? Senate unanimously confirmed Rubio's appointment to Secretary of State Monday evening, making Rubio the first confirmed cabinet member of the second Trump administration. Rubio also gave remarks in Spanish, giving thanks to God and his family members, both present and not present, including his parents, who he said came to the United States in 1956, and that the purpose of their lives was that their children could realize dreams that were not possible for them. Rubio, a Cuban-American son of refugees, is the first Hispanic American ever to hold this position. That was from AFP. Senator Rubio spoke after a ceremonial swearing-in Tuesday morning by Vice President J.D. Vance in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building.
Marco is one of my favorite people in Washington, and you know, he's a son of Cuban immigrants to this country. He grew up in very humble beginnings, but he has an incredibly deep love of our nation. He is a bipartisan solutions seeker, a guy who can actually get things done, but a conservative of great principle and great vision. And I think more than almost anybody that I've met in Washington the last few years, Senator Rubio, I think, understands the distinctive priorities of President Trump and why it represents such a significant and frankly important and needed departure from a generation of failed foreign policy. Senator Rubio will be the chief diplomat of the United States of America, but he will remain a friend. I'm proud to know him, and I'm proud to do this. So, Senator Rubio, thank you. I I also, of course, want to thank President Trump for nominating Senator Rubio and giving me a first easy swearing in. This is the first time I've ever sworn in an official in the United States government. And I want to thank Senator Jim Risch and his family for making this easy. You guys got this done and got it done very quickly. 99-0, right? I think even I wouldn't have got close to 99-0. So Senator Rubio, it's a great testament to your career of service. And this is a new chapter, man, but I think you're going to do great. So great. So I think that we're going to administer the oath, and then, Senator, you'll say a few words. Is that right? Let's do it. Okay. So please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Marco Rubio.
I, Marco Rubio.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office of which I'm about to enter.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
Vice President J.D. Vance administering the ceremonial swearing in to Secretary of State Marco Rubio today in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Secretary Rubio talked about the duties of the job.
President Trump was elected to keep promises, and he's going to keep those promises. And his primary promise when it comes to foreign policy is that the priority of the United States Department of State will be the United States. It will be furthering the national interest of this country. And he's given us a very clear mandate. President Trump's made it very clear, everything we do, and this is true in government, but especially at the Department of State, everything we do must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? If it doesn't do one of those three things, we will not do it. So that is the goal, and that is the task, and that is the promise that he was elected to keep, and that is the promise he will keep, and we will help him keep. It's a transformational moment. The United States, I think, is now, as President Trump pointed out last night, and I believe deeply, we are headed into a new era that I think will make the world a safer place. We have a president who yesterday, President Trump made clear in his inaugural speech that one of the primary goals of American foreign policies is the promotion of peace. Of course, peace through strength, peace and always without abandoning our values. But I think it's extraordinary that it's something that needs to be said and hasn't been said enough in recent memory. And we look forward to being a key part of helping the president achieve his agenda that he has a clear mandate to keep.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio at today's ceremonial swearing in by Vice President J.D. Vance. And the two senator designates who are replacing both J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio were sworn in today by the Senate. Ashley Moody, Republican of Florida, and John Husted, Republican of Ohio, both appointed by the governors. Later in the day, Secretary Rubio went to the State Department and gave remarks to employees in a welcome ceremony, and then had his first official meetings with the foreign ministers of the Quad. That's the U.S., India, Australia, and Japan. Earlier Tuesday, Senator Rubio did interviews with morning TV network news programs on NBC's Today. He was asked about the war in Ukraine, and he said, "It's going to be the official policy of the United States that the war has to end, and we're going to do everything possible to bring that about." New York Times reporting today that President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine said at the World Economic Forum on Tuesday that it was time for Europe to stand strong and remain united as the United States installs a new president, skeptical of global alliances and continued aid to Ukraine. Here's President Zelensky.
20 hours ago, President Trump's inauguration took place in Washington, and now everyone is waiting to see what he will do next. His first executive orders have already shown clear priorities. Most of the world's now thinking, so what's gonna happen to their relationship with America? What will happen to alliances, to support, to trade? How does President Trump plan to end wars? But no one is asking these kinds of questions about Europe. And we need to be honest about that. When we in Europe look at the United States as our ally, it's clear they are an indispensable ally. In times of war, everyone worries, will the United States stay with them? And every ally worry about that. But does anyone in the United States worry that Europe might abandon them someday, might stop being their ally? The answer is no. Washington does not believe Europe can bring them something that is really substantial. And I remember last year's Asia Security Summit in Singapore, the Shangri-La Dialogue, and their representatives of the United States delegation openly said their top security priority is the Indo-Pacific region, the second is the Middle East and the Gulf, and only the third is Europe. And that was under the previous administration. And will President Trump even notice Europe? Does he see NATO as necessary, and will he respect EU institutions? Ladies and gentlemen, Europe can't afford to be second or third in line for its allies. If that happens, the world will start moving forward without Europe. And that's a wall that will not be comfortable or beneficial for all Europeans.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Guardian newspaper writes the Russian President Vladimir Putin held a video call with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in a symbolic display of unity just hours after Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. Speaking from his residence outside Moscow, Putin highlighted the close ties between the two countries, stating that their relations were based on shared interest, equality, and mutual benefit, calling Xi his dear friend, reporting from The Guardian. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also spoke at the World Economic Forum today about international relations with President Trump back in the White House. You'll hear him through an interpreter.
In a world which, in the mirror of social media, permanently seems to teeters on the brink of a nervous breakdown, we need cool heads. Not every press conference in Washington, not every tweet should plunge us into a heated existential debate, and this holds also true after the changing government that took place in Washington yesterday. To be very clear, the United States are our closest ally outside of Europe, and I will do everything that it remains like that, because it is in our mutual interest, because the close cooperation between Europe and the US is indispensable for peace and security around the globe, and because our partnership is also an engine for a successful economic development. I had good first talks with President Trump, and also the contacts between our advisors are pointing in this direction. And at the same time, it is absolutely clear President Trump and his government will keep the world in suspense in the coming years in the field of energy and climate policy, in the field of trade policy, in foreign and security policy, and in some other fields as well. All of this has been announced by President Trump, and he reiterated this yesterday, and we are able and will be dealing with this without any excitement and indignation, but also without fake cozying up and telling them what they want to hear. Yes, President Trump says America first, and he means that. Nothing wrong about that, to focus on the interest of one's own country. All of us do that. However, cooperation and mutual understanding also is in the very own intrinsic interest. I said that for Germany many times. The European Union is the greatest national interest for Germany.
Through an interpreter, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. President Donald Trump, writes RNS News, attended the inaugural prayer service at the Washington National Cathedral Tuesday morning, finishing off the festivities marking the beginning of his second term with an interfaith service filled with prayers and hymns and a sermon that offered a religious challenge to his administration's stated goals. The sermon was given by Marianne Budde, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land.
Bishop Marianne Budde, Episcopal Diocese of Washington, at the presidential inaugural prayer service at Washington National Cathedral. President Trump was sitting in the front row listening. After President Trump returned to the White House, reporters asked him about what he heard.
Mr. President, what did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the
What did you think of the sermon?
What did you think? Did you like it? Did you find it exciting? Not too exciting, was it? I didn't think it was a good service, no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
They can do much better.
Washington National Cathedral has hosted 10 official inaugural prayer services for presidents of both parties, first in 1933 for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.